Hello, my name's Gavin. This is Genre Books, and this is the fifth of the bookshelf excavations. You're in luck this week. There are plenty of larger books, and consequently, not as many, so a shorter video today. And it's a bit of a hodgepodge of material as well. We have some reference books, we have non-fiction, as well as magazines, some pulp magazines, and of course some sci-fi and fantasy novels. First up is The Golden Bough by Sir James George Frazer. This is a book I've not read. I've read part of it. I've read the first one or two books of the full version. This is the collection of the abridged version, and this is an edition from 1941. I think much of the study here has been largely discredited, but there are still some absolute nuggets of wisdom, and there are some great examples, some comparisons of religious and pseudo-magical practices that occurred across the globe. It is not light reading, but there is always something to be teased out of it. And that goes double for this next book. This is The Postcard by Jacques Derrida. This whole book begins with this small picture on the front cover, and the fact that we have here Plato teaching Socrates. Now, what might appear to anyone or any normal scholar as a simple mistake by a medieval monk, to Jacques Derrida becomes a 500-page book on Freud, psychoanalysis, Edgar Allan Poe, Plato and Socrates. I'm struggling to remember some of this, but I haven't read all of it, but I have read parts of it multiple times and have the notes to prove it. This, I think I put in a previous video as the hardest book I had not finished, and yeah, I'm not sure I ever will finish it. But the challenge is there. I can't really bear to part with it just yet. By comparison, this next one is a breeze. It's Jean-Francois Lyotard's The Postmodern Condition, A Report on Knowledge. I remember this book being interesting at the time. It may be worth a reread. It's been a quarter of a century or more, and it was regarding legitimation, which is a word invented, I think, by Jürgen Habermas. And he uses the normal postmodern figures to extrapolate his ideas from. So there's Freud in here, there's Marx in here, there is, the Greeks are in here. But he's talking about, at the end of modernism and the grand meta-narratives of modernism, we're at a point where it's difficult to discern what is true from what is false. And if you consider that he died in 1999, I think a lot of water has gone under the bridge since to probably have a completely different reading of this book. I don't think I'll be doing it on this channel though. And onto a book that I've not read. I don't know anything about the author. I just saw this, I think for £1 somewhere, and looked like there might be something interesting in it. I mean, this says it's like a history of Western thought, so there must be something there somewhere. But yeah, oh, it's also a Ballantine book. That's quite funny. So if I am going to end up sorting these books by publisher, this is going to have some very strange bedfellows. One of the heaviest books in my collection, probably, is this, the Oxford Companion to English Literature, 6th edition, edited by Margaret Drabble. 140 contributors, covering just about everything except probably all the books I like. Back to postmodernism, but more of a literary study this time. Postmodernist fiction by Brian McHale. So here, looking at everything from magical realism from Latin America to the metafiction of North America to the nouveau roman of France to the science fiction of everywhere. It's difficult to call a scholarly text enjoyable, but I get a lot out of this one, or I certainly did the last time I read it, which was a long time ago. And I think I can promise this is the last of the postmodernism reader, Thomas Docherty editing, and has quite a few, I say famous contributors, but famous, in the world of postmodernism. So you have Richard Rorty, Jean Baudrillard, Lyotard again, Jürgen Habermas, Frederick Jameson, Ihib Hassan, Umberto Eco, Michael Nyman talking about music. There's quite a few people here. As a primer or primer in the States on postmodernity, you don't go far wrong with this. It doesn't get too deep into any of the weeds, and has a nicer breadth to it. Critical Terms for Literary Study by Lentricchia, edited by Lentricchia and Thomas McLaughlin from the University of Chicago Press. This is from 1990, and whether these are still the critical terms for literary study that literature students will use, I don't know anymore, but they certainly worked for me at the time. And the rollercoaster of fun just keeps going with the third edition of the Classics of Western Philosophy, and this just does what it says on the cover. It's everyone, I think, from Plato through to John Stuart Mill, and it's the names that you would all recognise, and there are plenty of other YouTube channels that will take you through philosophy. I don't intend to get into that here. So, to coin a phrase, and with apology to Al, those were the big hard books and classics, and we now move to more my domain, the Planet Stories. So I have on the shelf, these are usually in little bags, but I've taken them out to show to the camera. This is Planet Stories from, when was this one from? This is the spring 1949 issue, and has, amongst others, a story by Ray Bradbury, Dwellers in the Science. March 1953, and the main story here is a novel, full novel, by Gardner F. Fox, Warlock of Sharador. And winter 1946, and again Gardner F. Fox, The Man the Sun Gods Made. And a few recent magazines. These are from the British Science Fiction Association, so work for writers and others. This is Focus, and a couple of recent issues of Vector. So usually some interesting articles in these. This one I probably bought for the pictures. This is the Science Fiction Book and Illustrated History by Franz Rothensteiner, and it does have some great pictures in here. H.G. Wells, Cyrano de Bergerac, Hugo Gernsback, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Abraham Merritt, E.E. Smith, H.P. Lovecraft, Arthur Conan Doyle, Isaac Asimov. It's basically all the classics, and illustrated, as the title suggested, throughout. So there is plenty of book covers, promotional posters, pictures from films. So there we are with the original Thing from Howard Hawks, Day the Earth Stood Still, Forbidden Planet, and moving into comics. So yeah, there's a fair amount of stuff in here. Also full of pictures, but with that complete encyclopedic knowledge of science fiction and many other literary genre is this from Mike Ashley. This is Out of This World. Something which I referred to a fair bit during June on the Range, and something which I will be dipping into for future Junes on the Range, or June on the Ranges. I don't know how we're going to say that, but this is the Pulp Western Hero. Now this is, well, it has an ISBN, but it looks like a photostated book. The pictures are not of the best quality, but what it does is it goes through the pulp west, or the western pulps, and picks up just on the main heroes and villains, so those characters that occurred in series, so appeared in the magazines time and again. And as it tells the story of those pulp heroes, you learn the story of the writers and the magazines, and it gives a more well-rounded picture than just saying this is the history of pulp magazine publication. So obviously a labour of love on the part of the author, and one that's appreciated. And finally, for this little oversized section, the supplemental checklist of fantastic literature. So this is from 1963, compiled and edited by Bradford M. Day, and again we're looking at something which is, you can tell this is typewritten and photostated, but it looks comprehensive, and if it's not comprehensive, it's certainly got enough here to keep me intrigued. For every name I recognise, there are at least 5 I don't, so it's a nice idea that there's still a lot to get into. So in the final stretch already, I told you it wasn't going to be very long today, and we have Adrian Tchaikovsky with Blood of the Mantis. Unfortunately, I picked this up very cheaply, saw the name, know I like Adrian Tchaikovsky, and then realised that this is book 3 of Shadows of the Apt. So guess what? I don't own book 1 or book 2. Tchaikovsky does seem to be incredibly prolific, and it's funny that something which I really sort of admire in the pulp writers, that their ability to churn out thousands of words a day. It's brilliant when you're sort of reading the stories for free in the Internet Archive, or picking something up for pennies in a pulp magazine, but when you're charging a tenner for the paperback, it becomes a little more onerous to try keep up. So I probably won't try to keep up with Tchaikovsky, but he's pulp-like in the writing in more than just the output. I do like the space opera feel of something like the Shards of Earth series, and I like the idea that he can oscillate between science fiction and fantasy with such ease. And now for some books in the British Library Science Fiction Collection. We start with Charles Eric Maine's The Tide Went Out. It's not post-apocalyptic, it's mid-apocalyptic, and it's the story of people in London as the seas start to drain away. And another apocalyptic book from Charles Eric Maine that I have not yet read, The Darkest of Nights. So a deadly plague engulfs East Asia, and the rest of the world governments look on callously until the shadow of the new virus begins to sweep across the globe. And as the pandemic draws nearer to Britain, shelters are hastily constructed, but when the death toll rises and the populace finds themselves sacrificed for the sake of the elite, the cry for revolution rings out amidst the sirens. Next up, William F. Temple with Shoot at the Moon, and a collection of shorter works from John Brunner. This is The Society of Time. And finally, half a dozen books I've read the first in this series years and years ago. I really should read the rest. I went and bought them all. Now I just need to find the time. Lord Fowl's Bane, The Ill-Earth War, White Gold Wielder, The Power That Preserves, The Wounded Land, and The One Tree. I'm not sure I've got all those in the right order. And that's it. Short and sweet. But next week, this shelf, which you can't see just here, but this has the majority of my favourite part of my collection, the Ballantine Adult Fantasy series from the late 60s and early 70s. Some classic works, some fantastic covers, and not a textbook on postmodernism in sight. Promise. Until then.